Right then, I think we are live. I'm going to have a quick check. It's the first time doing it, so. Have a quick look. There we are. Here we go. Right, we'll get underway shortly. Got 18 people watching. Wow. I thought it'd be like 4 or 5. One of those is my wife. One of those is my mother. Okay, so we'll give it a few minutes and then we'll crack on. There's a chat here on the right hand side. I don't know if anybody wants to. There we go, Mark. Good. If the sound quality changes or anything, then just pop it in the chat there, and I'll fiddle around with it a little bit. Match day moments. Anybody been to Blackpool? Like to know? Bought anything? Spent some money? I didn't. Right. 22. We'll see if that goes up at all, but we'll get cracking. Right. So a little bit different to what I usually do. So when I'm doing my videos, I usually film 2 or 3 hours worth of footage, and I condense that down to 15, 16 minutes episodes. So I can edit myself to make myself look professional, almost like I know what I'm doing. This is going to be completely different. We'll try and keep it as informal as possible, but I do have some sort of structure to follow so it doesn't sort of descend into pandemonium. So if you've got any questions, stick them in the chat down here. If you're watching on, 28, there we go, 32 says here. If you've got any questions, stick them in the chat, and I'll try and get them in. And if you're watching on YouTube, there should be a little share button there. If you want to click that, copy the URL, post it to any of your Pigeon mates, get them watching. We'll give them another 30 seconds. Thanks, George. So we'll give them another 30 seconds before we get underway. I've got Ian waiting in the background to answer all these questions that we've got. We've got good few questions here, actually, and some of them are mine, just to sort of pad it out a little bit, but we might not need that. So where are we now? So yeah, if you do ask a question, then I can see your names, but if you want to put your location in, that'd be great, and potentially the Fed or club that you're racing, just that'd be useful information for us. Right, we've got enough time, haven't we? How's that? 2 minutes. Anybody else that's a bit tardy, they can watch it on catch up, can't they? So, right. So the reason for this whole live chat is to discuss the proposition that Ian created, and it's now been put forward to the RPRA AGM, and that's been done by the East Midlands region and also the Welsh region. So you can see that on the RPRA website. So it's going to go to the vote now, which is great. I think it's the fact that it's made it past that first hurdle is good news. So what's the point of it? Some people, my experience is, so I, for the first time ever, went along to the regional meeting as a delegate for the club, and I actually thought it was quite good. I was surprised. A lot of people were there. They said that the turnout is particularly high, and I suspect that it's because of this proposition. Excuse me. And I was surprised by the questions that people had. Everybody there, majority of people there, had something genuinely interesting and useful to say. So, and they were experienced guys. These people have been racing far longer than me, and so and they've got their experience of the RPRA and how this whole thing works is much more detailed than what the experience that I've got. So it was interesting to see that, but there were obvious flaws in that meeting, and the first one being that I don't think most people got to see this proposition as an attachment until a week before. It might have even been a little bit longer than that, but it was over Christmas. So I think a lot of clubs would have struggled to arrange a meeting in that time to vote on it. But vote we did. And the East Midlands voted to send this through to the AGM. So that was great. It shows that it can be done, even if it is a little bit, ham-fisted sometimes. So we'll bring in Ian. He's been waiting for a while, so let's see if I can make this work without cocking up. Where are we? There we go, Ian. Where are you? In a nice sunny location where you are.
Yeah, typical Welsh weather and background. Yeah,
looks like it. Okay, so Ian, thanks for coming on again. Just a quick sort of update for everybody that this, I want to try and structure this in two ways. There's two parts to this conversation that we're going to have, and one is the financial side, which I think a lot of people have got an interest in, and the other is the organizational side, which is they're both tied together, but I think it's worth separating them apart a little bit, because some of the questions that we've had sort of differentiate between the two. So we'll move on to, we'll start with the financial side. We'll do that relatively quickly, and then we'll move on to the proposition in particular that you've got, Ian, and we'll go through people's questions as we go. Let me just try and pull up that chat again so I don't miss anything. There we go. Right, so Ian, looking at the consolidated accounts, do you think things are improving at the RPRA? Bearing in mind, I had a quick look, and the things that jumped out at me was the massive increase in wages over the last few years. I did a few quick sums. I know they're consolidated, so it's difficult to separate the RPRA and the British Homing World and work out what's happening with each organisation. I think they should be separate so we can see. But the wages in 2022 were 401,000, and 2023 491,000. So jump of 80 odd grand there. And then this latest year, it's gone up to 584,000, and that includes temporary staff, which is a huge increase in staffing costs. So for me, an organisation that's losing members and technology becoming more accessible for organisations on quite cheap, it's quite cheap. This thing that we're using now is $19 a month. It's quite cheap to use these kind of things. There seems to be a massive increase in the labour, and obviously we know that costs have gone up, minimum wage has gone up, but in that same period, when wages were 401,000 in 2022, the RPRA made a loss of 145k. When the wages went up to 491, they made a loss of 268k. And now this time, the wages for 2024, 584, they've made a profit of 116,000, which on the sounds of it, on the face of it, great, they've made a profit. But I think when you dig deeper into why that's a profit, still cause for concern, especially with that increasing. So just to reiterate, looking at the consolidated accounts, are things improving at the RPRA, Ian?
Well, if you looked at the bottom line figure, which is the retained profit for the year, I mean, the initial answer would be things have improved, because it's moved from a £284,000 loss to £116,000 retained profit. But as you alluded to, Dan, in reality, how they've got to that retained profit is questionable and not sustainable, really, in my view. I think I sent you a link to a statement I put out leading up to the 2021 AGM, where I was talking about reducing the running costs and bringing up the income, so bringing up the subscription level. But our opinion at the time was we shouldn't be bringing up that subscription level until we reduce our overheads. And our overheads were reduced quite substantially in that year leading up to that, when the executive committee, as it was deemed during COVID, was given a little bit more power to do what it needed to do. We made some staff redundant. We kept all overtime at the British Homing World, which was astronomical amount of money. A lot of people were concerned we wouldn't get the British Homing World out in time, but the proof was in the pudding. Even during the pandemic, cutting the overtime, still went out on time. Nothing changed. So on the face of it, you think things are going up, but the costs are going up. All the costs are going up, as you pointed out. Wages, which is by far the biggest cost in the RPRA in the British Homing World, has risen quite substantially this year. Even if you take out some one-off costs like redundancy payments, it's gone up, about £54,000. I think that's hard to justify, really. It seems they've moved away from the online approach that we were trying to take services, which was enabling us to reduce our overheads, going back to more of a paper-based approach to everything, which costs a lot more money. And basically, they've come to this profit figure by levying the members. So, the picture isn't as rosy as it first might appear, really, to be honest with you. And this is what all the proposal was about, in terms of trying to cut the second biggest overhead of the RPRA in terms of governance and how the associations run.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought about that was, I don't think anybody particularly cares about paying a little bit more. We've mentioned this previously. 8 quid, 9 quid, 20 quid, whatever it is, it's a few pints. So that's not a massive issue. I think the way that I look at this, and I know it was mentioned that a few people have mentioned that, well, look, the RPRA have turned this around. They're making a profit. But I think it's a little bit underhand in that, because if I had a restaurant and I had 50 covers, so 50 tables, and I ran and they were full, or even 90% full most days, and I was making a decent profit, that's the side of a healthy business. And the prices are reasonable, people are coming in. What's happening now is the membership's declined. I think it was in that article that you sent me previously, 20 odd thousand members. We're now down to 13,200. So, at a time there were 80,000 members. So you can have all those tables, you can have all those staff, you can have the whole establishment if you've got 50 covers and most of them are full. Now we're looking at 2-3 tables per night. So what they've had to do is increase the cost of a dish. So where you were having your fish and chips and it was costing you 12 quid, they're now going to charge you 40 quid for your fish and chips. And you just get, well, of course you're going to make a profit, because you're still turning over the money that you need, but you're charging an awful lot for, and you don't have the requirement for that. And I think that's all they need to do to make a profit every year, and say this every year, is just raise the levy. Do that every year, and they'll always make a profit. And me, as the way I look at the financials is the organization functioning efficiently? And I would say no, definitely not. And I don't think anybody that looks at those accounts or looks at the history can say that it is. And I think that's a big concern that a lot of people seem to have. But yeah, I think that's pretty much what you were sort of.
Yeah, I'm picking up on the analogy you used about the restaurant and the tables. If you had 9 full tables, let's say for argument's sake, you need 2 waitresses and 2 chefs. If you go to the 2 tables, you need 1 waitress and 1 chef. But that's not what happening here, is it? They're not cutting their overheads in line with that reduction in service demand. The overheads are going the other way; they're going up.
Yeah, I mean, I did a quick. People can correct me if I'm wrong. What we got now? We've got 62 people watching. Comments of Ronald. Yeah. So is that profit to do with the sale of the Readings, Ronald Jackson? I think that was a couple of years before that one. It was a point about she, wasn't it? So one of the things I was looking at was this year's wages. So I put a question in the Facebook group, How to Train Your Pigeon Facebook group. I've had an influx of people joining that today. There are 3 questions to ask. And if people don't answer that, then it's not automatically gets accepted onto the group. So make sure you ask those questions. I try to avoid spamming accounts. So if there's no profile photo or nothing pigeon related, if there's only one friend, then I won't add it. But an influx of people on the Facebook page today. So I asked the question, 2 questions. Let's refresh it so we can get an up-to-date result. And this is for you guys that are watching. Question 1 was, the RPRA and British Home and World cost $853,000 to run last year. Do you think, as members, you're getting value for money? Not a huge amount of people so far. I posted this an hour ago. So 35 votes, no. 6 votes, not sure. 0 have said that yes, they're getting value for money, which is interesting. And I'll leave that up there for the rest of the day and see what other people think. Question 2 was, should the RPRA adopt more automation to streamline the running of the organisation? And so far, everybody has said yes. Nobody said not sure. Nobody said no. And I think that's something that we'll come to later. But it's an interesting. If the RPRA could do this on their own page, they could ask questions and polls, and members could, give them their feedback straight away. But there's no 2-way thing there. So I think they're missing a trick. It'd be really good and useful for them to sort of find out what people are thinking. Right. So shall we move on to where have we got that question done? Russell Bradford. So bear with me a second, because I'm going to have to try and log in and find all these emails with these questions. So we're going for Russell Bradford. Here we go. Right. So a little bit of a long one. I could have posted this and copied it and posted it on here. So, Russell, I certainly have 1, if not 2, if I may, albeit with a bit of preamble. That's fine. My understanding is that all the regions as they currently exist have lodgements, deposits in various formats, most probably savings accounts. It is perhaps questionable as to whom this money belongs, but my belief is the approximate sum total, if all added together, is not far short of £500,000, a massive sum of money even in today's environment. My question for you, Ian, is somewhat hypothetical, but if the regions were dissolved and all the lodgements consolidated within the RPRA's control and governance, how would encapsulating and owning these region finances impact on the RPRA and in turn grow, I'm interested in that, the sport? If the RPRA aren't able to take over these deposits, will they be returned to the membership?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question by Russell. This came up at the council meeting when I was working for the RPRA, and it was the consensus around the table, and I stress consensus because I don't think there isn't a legal view on this obtained as far as I'm aware, but the consensus was that the RPRA held in the money held in the regional accounts belongs to the RPRA. Now, there are people with difference of opinions, but ultimately, to answer the question, one or two things will happen. First of all, three things. They need to get legal advice on it is the first thing they need to do, I think, to be honest with you, because the way the RPRA constitution and governance structure set up is not clear, which is another weakness. Not clear at all. So I think they need to get a legal view on it, first of all, and that legal view will basically be on the fact of whether that money should go into the RPRA, central RPRA, or whether it should be distributed back to the regional members at the time if the regions are dissolved. But as I say, that very much depends on what comes back from that legal view, really.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the cause of quite a bit of animosity, regardless of what happens with this proposition, whether it goes through or not. I mean, one thing to think about is that amount of cash is, if the RPRA wanted to sort of put efforts into securing the future of the RPRA, that's a big chunk of money to get people that know what they're doing, in particular with technology and advancements that they can utilize to future-proof the sport, essentially, is what we want to do. So, yeah, I don't know if everybody could agree on that. It'd be great if you could get a consensus as to how best to spend your savings.
I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, if it was $500,000, I did do an exercise a couple of years back. I can't remember what the figure was at the time. You have to forgive me. But say it is £500,000, and these proposals went through and the regions were disbanded and that money went into the settled pot. When you consider that currently, under the current assets of the balance sheet, the RPRA's got £738,000 in cash. That's cash without other current assets like debtors, etc. So £500,000 added to that. I mean, the RPRA, assuming the new structure can enforce, for want of a better description, efficiencies like we've talked about around wages and taking more services online and using technology more, then obviously the RPRA is going to be in a better financial position moving forward. But also, it'll mean that members moving forward will have to pay less money every year. I mean, I think this year the subscription is £35. So if you're a partnership, that's £70. When, are you getting that value for money from the service of the RPRA? I don't want to be knocking the RPRA because I think the RPRA does provide a good service, but whether or not it's value for money is another thing, and it definitely needs to change.
Yeah, I think that's the crux, isn't it? It's everybody appreciates that it needs to be there, and we all need it in order to race, but it needs to be efficient. It needs to work properly, and if it doesn't, then it's up to the members to sort of drive those changes, which will bring us on to the next part. So I'll have a look at some of these questions. So Matt Patton here says, one of the things I was thinking about, if different regions have their own accounts, are these look at in regard of the overall RPRA accounts? No, I think it's separate, isn't it?
Yeah, the regional accounts and the cash reserves they might have or deposits don't appear anywhere in the RPRA accounts.
Mm-hmm. RPRA, this is Jamie Gleave. The RPRA remains an archaic structure with an unhealthy desire to maintain tradition that needs to come to an abrupt end if it wants to survive and be fit for purpose. I kind of agree and I disagree. I do agree that it definitely needs to change, but I also like some of the traditional side of things. I mean, I do like that, but at the same time, if it doesn't work, you've got to move with the times, unfortunately. Mark, an average of 6.7% loss in members per year, it will be down to 7,071 members in 10 years' time. Yep. Technology, total new thinking, dissolving of regions, and much more should be done to counter the decline. It's one of the concerns I had. I had a quick forecast of the membership numbers at a 6.7 average, 6.7% decline year on year. And within 10 years, the membership that you've got in your own club now would be half. And I don't think that's sustainable for most feds. Your birdage is going to have to go up to cover the cost of diesel. Look at the average age of your club members. How many of them are going to still be flying in 10 years? And that's purely selfish on my behalf. I sort of put that out at the start. This whole endeavor, the whole reason I'm doing this is purely selfishly. I want to be able to race in several decades' time, and I don't see that happening at the moment. That's why I'm sort of for all of this.
No, and the sad part about that is, Dan, is that, I think it was back in 2018, I predicted where we would be. It's not that accurate, but I definitely predicted that around this time would be the crux point in terms of how the sport will continue. And I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we're really going to see an impact with a drop in more and more members for the reasons you described. And what's frustrating from my point of view is that the RPRA council, or a lot of the members on council, are willing to accept that. And that's something I wasn't willing to accept. I think we should be doing everything possible to be encouraging more and more people into the sport. We can all have a defeatist attitude. We can all turn around and say the sport's dead and it's never going to recover. And maybe people are right. But we shouldn't accept it without at least trying to do something about it. And that's a frustrating part from my point of view. They'd rather waste money, in my opinion, on keeping regions and councils and the council structure in place rather than using that money to promote the sport. That's just something I can never get my head around, really. Why people will be willing to accept the demise of the sport. I mean, when I took the job, one of the first comments that was made by me by a senior member of council was, "You're young enough to see us through." And I just thought at that point, what have I done?
I mean, I think that for me, that's the ultimate thing, isn't it? It's how do we get more people involved? And with the channel, the How to Train Your Pigeon channel, which is a bit more jovial and, happy, I guess. Than this channel seems to be. I'm surprised, actually. And same when I went to Blackpool at the weekend, as how many people are getting back into it. And they came up and introduced themselves, said hello, and they watched the channel and they like the enthusiasm. And people seem to be enthusiastic about joining. Some people don't even know it exists, and they're looking forward to getting their own bird. I could just talk for hours and hours about the benefits of it. I'm hoping to do that. There's something else to announce at some point soon, but I mean, it shouldn't be on the decline. This sport, it'll never reach the dizzying heights as it used to. But there's things that we can do, and
we can at least sustain its future, can't we? We can at least, make sure it's here in 40 years' time.
Yeah. So there's a couple of people commented, Winfoot Lofts. I watch your YouTube channel, by the way. I know I think it's ending it, unfortunately. So we should definitely be working with modern technology rather than against it. Ian had the subs being paid directly, and unfortunately that was cut. Is that so? That was before my time. So you could pay your subs online.
Yeah, the last year or the year before I left, I introduced an online system, again against much opposition from regions and certain members of council, where members could pay their RPRA fees direct to the RPRA online. So they just club secretary, for example, could log in. You bring up all the members' details of the people in their clubs. They tick a box to say which members they want to pay online. We distributed the contribution to the region from there direct. And if you was an individual member, again, you could log in, bring up your details, pay it online. When I left, that was removed practically immediately following that. And in my mind, I know I've repeated this before in conversations we've had, Dan, which you've published on YouTube, but to my mind, there was only one reason that they took that offline, is because they knew that was a threat to the regional structure, because people will then start asking the question, well, why do we need the regions if we're paying this money direct to HQ, whereas opposed to where they pay them direct to regions at the moment? So, this kind of attitude of protecting an outdated, costly process at all costs is just running right throughout the structure, really.
Yeah, I think so. Wayne Jones, Shropshire. I presume the membership numbers are 2024 numbers. After the imposed levy of 2024, I imagine that number will decrease by much more than the 6.7 predicted. Yeah, I think everybody agrees with that. I think it's a best case scenario is the prediction that we put in before, but 6.7% drop in 10 years, being half the amount of members. Just look at the average age of people, and also you're right. This levy it's cheesed a lot of people off. So I think a lot of people will be, and same as partnerships are dissolving. I hear. So will the levy have to go up again, or will the membership fees have to go up again? I don't think that's the biggest issue. I've said it a few times. I don't think the amount of money that people are paying is the biggest issue. I think it's what they're getting for that money, and the fact that you can get the same result for a lot less. And then even if you continue charging that fee, but you put that money into growing the membership, nobody wants to be racing in clubs with 2 or 3 members. So use that money, use that wealth, and how many? I won't say that again. Right. So bang on to another question, shall we? I'm trying to keep my eye on the chats here, so keep it going. We're hovering around this 1669 mark. Let's get it to 70, shall we? Right. Where are we next? So I've got to keep tabs on where I'm going. Right. We'll move over to the organisational side if you want, Ian. I think that's what everybody's here for. So for those people that don't know, let's keep it as brief as we can, but with enough information. What is the proposal? Why is it needed? Where are we with it now? And what are the next steps?
Okay, well, again, if people haven't seen some of the previous interviews we've done, Dan, they probably will be new to all this. So I'll try and give as much detail as briefly as I can in terms of what has been proposed and what's trying to be achieved. I mean, we've talked already during this interview about the current regional structure and the archaic nature of the governance structure, the RPRA, the regional council structure. And I think it was after the levy was introduced initially, there was a lot on social media. There was a lot of people obviously rightly questioning the need for it and, what was the solution to stop this happening. So we did it, myself and John Waters, past vice president of the RPRA, was somebody who was very open to change, and they soon got rid of him. We did the video to talk about, the situation, the financial situation in the RPRA and why they put the levy on. I like to think it was a positive, supportive thing, but at the same time, highlighting the problems and then putting forward solutions, really, one of which was resurrecting the All Report, which, if nobody's aware of what the All Report was, it was something that was commissioned by the RPRA Council back in 2016 and was being finalised just as I was being interviewed for the role of general manager, as it was at the time. And before I decided to take the job, when I was offered it, I spoke to the consultants doing the whole report, which is all associates. And everything they said made total sense to me. And one of the reasons I took the job. Now, when it came to implementing the recommendations in the whole report, which was basically moving from a council structure where at the time we had 23 members of council, which met twice a year, moving to an executive committee approach where perhaps 5 members were able to meet far more regular and react to opportunities and threats. And it also talked about rationalising the cost of the RPRA in other kind of ways and moving from this regional representational approach where you have to travel miles and miles and give up hours of your time to attend a meeting to vote on anything going on with the RPRA, to just basically implementing a one member, one vote basis for change and for the direction of the RPRA, which, I think makes total sense really in today's world. When the RPRA was formed, I mean, probably the regional structure was the best form of governance at the time because, people, we haven't got the technology that we have today to enable people quite quickly and quite reasonably and cheaply to vote one member, one vote. So we did that video, and it was quite a lot of discussion following that video with people getting in contact with myself, John, and I think yourself, Dan, asking about the All Report, where they could find a copy of the All Report and what they needed to do to introduce it. So it was obvious, that to introduce the All Report, it would meant rewriting the whole rule book of the RPRA, which is a mishmash of rules going back, years and years and years, quite complicated. Dan, I'm just going to have to stop and plug my laptop into the charger, sorry. Something I should have done before we started, but I'll do it, otherwise I'll be going off.
That's fine. Well, I can pick on here. So there's a couple of questions on here. So Barry Nickel, very quickly, why isn't anyone from the RPRA, or at least representing the RPRA, engaging here? Was there any contact formed to them prior to this discussion session? Great job, guys. It's good to see. Yes, Barry, I've been trying for over a year, 2 years nearly, to get in touch with somebody from the RPRA. I've sent emails. I sent another one this morning inviting them onto this call, anybody. And so far, I've not had any response. I tried phoning And I managed to get through to the receptionist a couple of weeks ago in anticipation of this, and I explained what it was that I was trying to do. Apparently, because I wanted to speak to Chris Sutton, he was on in a meeting. Apparently, I gave him my number and expected a phone call back. I didn't get that, so yeah, we're still waiting. Fingers crossed, somebody will get in touch at some point. And it's a real shame because I feel like potentially they feel like under threat perhaps by this, and I don't think that's the way that it should be. And there's an episode of How to Train Your Pigeon that I'm going to put out soon that will show the emails that I've sent, and they're very positive. They're like, is there anything I can do on the channel to try and help drive the sport that you guys think I should be doing? And nothing so far. So unfortunately, that's where we are with them. And I've tried no end of times to get some sort of dialogue going, but yeah, it failed so far. So interesting one. Ian, did you finish up, or was there something else you wanted to say on that when you started going flat?
So basically, we were approached by people wanting to resurrect the old report, and we were advised them they need to rewrite the rules, etc. And I know I appreciate that's a daunting prospect with a lot of time needs to be put into it. So what we did, I rewrote the rules that would implement the whole report, but took it one step further to getting rid of the regional structure altogether. I think the time has come now where the financial pressures are such, and the situation in the RPRA is to move from that archaic structure straight to a governance structure where you have one member, one vote, and an executive committee running the association. So I rewrote the rules. There's 40-odd pages of rule changes in, as you've put it previously, Dan, technical speak, deleting existing rules and implementing new rules. And we thought, well, how are we going to get this out there? I sent it to the people who'd been in contact with me, asking, say, well, here's the document. But we thought, well, let's put it out wider. We did a bit of an interview describing what the proposition was. And basically, in short, it was moving from the regional council structure to getting rid of the regions, having a one member, one vote, an executive committee to run the RPRA will be elected on a three-year basis. And that would ultimately save around, we estimated, depending on the membership numbers, save around about £80,000 conservatively in the RPRA. So, it was moving to, in my opinion, what is a better structure that will engage far more members in having a say in the RPRA, but also at a much reduced cost. I mean, one of the arguments that's been thrown at me is, well, no matter what system you have, apathy is such that members won't engage anyway. Now, let's assume they're right. And only if we went to one member, one vote, the same people who engage through a regional structure engage in the one member, one vote. There's still a positive, isn't it? Because you saved 80 grand. So we've put this proposal out there. We did quite a bit of PR around it, trying to propose it, I suppose. As you mentioned earlier, there was the first stage we needed to get it on the RPRA AGM agenda, which we've done because members of the East Midland region and the Welsh region have voted in favour of it. So it's gone forward to the RPRA AGM, which will be voted on the 28th of February. And perhaps, Dan, some of your questions will come to what needs to happen between now and the 28th of February if this is to have any chance of getting through.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably what we want to be talking about the most is, so the resistance I've met mostly with this proposition is that the RPRA won't change. And I'm pretty sure everybody's heard that. They don't want to change. People don't want to vote for it. People don't want to do whatever. When I went to the meeting for the first time, I don't have a comparison of what the membership or the amount of members that usually go, but good authority says that there were more people there than usual. So that suggests that if you get people, a proposition that people believe in and they actually want it to change and things to happen, then it can happen. But it's far too long-winded and tedious to make that happen. And even just the way that it functions, there were some technical things that weren't quite right with one or two issues. And so what I would say, I think, well, it's a difficult thing because most of the people there, I think, wanted to vote it through. They wanted the RPRA to change, and they said so, whether this was the correct thing or not. And there were quite a few comments about you, Ian, saying that this is you getting your own back. And I said, well, read the proposition on its merit. Ignore the characters. I don't know anybody. I don't know any of the presidents or reps. I don't know any of them, so I don't really know what's happened previously. Just read the proposition, and is it a good one? Is it a good one for the RPRA? And that's why I'm backing it. I think as far as the next step that everybody else needs to do is do exactly what I did. I got onto the other members in the club, and I got onto the club secretary, and I said, "Are we sending anybody?" No, usually our club very rarely send any. If I don't think I've ever sent anybody, or at least that's the impression I got. And so myself and another member, Malk, who was really keen to see this go through, between us, come on, let's get it done. Emails sent, phone calls, messages, whatever. And it does take a lot of effort to just to try and get there. And we went along as delegates, and it got through with 2 votes. So if myself and Malcolm hadn't have gone, it wouldn't have got through at the East Midlands region, because the chairman had the deciding vote, and obviously we know which way that went. In fact, I think, So if it wasn't for us, it wouldn't have happened. So, and I don't know what it was like in the Welsh region. I don't know what it's like in everybody else's. If everybody else has taken the time to find out when their region meeting was, the important thing now is it's on the AGM agenda. It's on the agenda for the AGM in February the 28th. So between now and then, each club has got to get a delegate to their regional meeting, which I'm guessing will be planned, between now and the 28th. They're going to have to do it. If there isn't one, get in touch with your secretary and say, well, why not? Because a lot of people have commented, haven't they, and said they don't know when their regional meetings are. So, if you support it or you're against it, if you think this is a load of crap, this idea should be thrown out, and go along to the meeting. Yeah. And at least have your say, and you might find that somebody else sort of says something that changes your mind, or you might change everybody else's mind. But it is long-winded. This is a much easier way of doing it. This is my argument for why it needs to be voted in. We're at opposite and different countries, and we can discuss this at length. And all of these people can also chime in with questions, and they get to see it. This is the way it should be done. It's almost like question time, but for pigeon racing. And I'm not Fiona Bruce by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this is the kind of technology that we want to be using, and people can be heard, and they don't have to get in the car and drive 50 miles away to do it. So unfortunately, in order for that to happen, yes, you guys are going to have to get your delegate to yourself, or your delegate to the regional meeting, and vote in favor for it if you can. One interesting thing about that is, if you do go along as a delegate and your region does vote in favour for it, let us know in advance of the AGM. I don't think there's any rules against that, is there?
Or against, Dan.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, or against, but there's no rules against. There's no rule against people telling them no.
No, so everybody starts talking about it. Anyway, can I just pick up on the point you made about that they won't change anyway. The RPRA won't change anyway. I mean, it's something that's thrown at me all the time. It's thrown at me when I was in the job, and it's thrown at me now in terms of what we're trying to do with this proposal. And I understand why people have that attitude. I've almost had that attitude myself, to be honest with you. But I think unless people do start engaging, people who are like-minded, because I'm convinced, I did a consultation exercise a few years back. I know the majority of RPRA members are in favour of change, whatever that change looks like, really. But unless they engage, unless they go along to the region meeting and vote on these propositions, then it isn't going to get through. That because the people who go along to the regions normally are not going to want it to change. Some of them do. Some of them are there for what I believe are the right reasons. Others people are there for other reasons, which we don't need to go into. But and just to give you some kind of idea of kind of the lengths these people go to try and protect the status quo. I mean, the Southwest. I'm going to name people. The Southwest region. There's a club, Pope NHS, I think it is. They sent the proposal into the Southwest region. Weeks and weeks and weeks ago. I think they were one of the first clubs to pick it up and send it in, much to their credit. And they were all waiting. They circulated the proposition to the clubs via email, and they were all waiting for a meeting to vote on the proposition. And the meeting never happened. And the deadline for submitting it to the RPRA came and went. So they're going to contact and say, well, what's happened in the proposition? And fairly recently, they've had a communication from the secretary. And I'm not blaming the secretary, because I don't think the secretary's behind it. There's other people. Where the president of the region copied in, saying, we've already had a vote on this back in 2016 when we voted on the All report, so you're not having a vote. Well, that's not in the jurisdiction to do that. And I mean, now it's on the RPRA agenda. They will get an opportunity to vote on it when the Southwest region call it AGM. Just go along there and get our vote in.
if they call their AGM. Have they called their AGM? Is anybody from the Southwest?
I think they have advertised it. I think
Yeah.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, get along to that. Right, shall we fly through some of these questions quickly, and then we'll move on to some comments on here. So, Winford Loft's question for Ian: when you can hear my belly rumbling, I haven't had my dinner yet. Put this microphone up. When you took the role for general manager, did you realise how tied your hands were in relation to being able to implement and change things?
Well, I've been
quick on these ones, and we'll go through them.
Yeah, I've been in the sport all my life, or around the sport all my life. I started flying in my own name when I was 9 years of age. I had some kind of idea, but to be honest with you, nothing prepared me for what was going to come, because, I think it was like, sometimes it felt like, hands were tied behind your back and you were thrown in the pool at deep end and told to swim, because it was almost impossible, because everything you tried to implement, not everything we tried to implement, because things did change. A lot of things did change, but nowhere near enough one needed to change. There was always something blocking it, either the council or regions. And it's frustrating when you know it's the right thing for the association and its members, and it's being blocked. I mean, even simple things like the free online transfer system came in for loads of opposition, but was very, very well received by the members, and has been really, really successful, and has allowed the association to cut its overheads in terms of wages, etc. But even that came in for some real kind of strong opposition from certain members of council and certain regions, because, again, I think they had so much fear about taking these things online, because they could see that was eventually going to move out the old kind of brigade, which is a term I heard bandied about a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So another one. I'm trying to read through these and listen at the same time. So difficult multitasking here. So Mark said, 1 member, 1 vote is the fair solution. As a non-club member, I have no power vote anyway. Sorry for spamming the chat. I'll shut up now. He says so. Well, keep these questions going. So here's another one. Wayne Jones. When Ian has explained the proposals, I'd love to hear his thoughts on combining RPRA and British Home and World under one roof. What would redundancy implications be? Is the RPRA new headquarters suitable for both to operate?
Obviously, it should be under one roof, and this was discussions I raised a lot. I mean, in the early days, when I took the job, the British Home and World was making a lot of money, and I was told on a number of occasions when I was trying to change things, because there was an astronomical amount of overtime there going on. The fact it was in a different location, so you had different overheads in terms of the building, and I was told quite frankly, leave it alone, it's making money. Well, it was making money, but we could all see the way it was going. It was quite heading towards a way where in a few years' time it was going to lose money, and what was a great asset was going to become a liability, and that's exactly what happened last year. I mean, that £280,000 loss the association made, a large proportion of that was the British Home and World loss. So it's this kind of reactionary thing to everything, rather than being proactive and seeing what needs to be done and anticipating what's coming, and not get to that situation where it's costing you money. So I think Wayne's right. It can, should be taken under one roof. And to be honest with you, from my point of view, and I believe some of this has happened. I mean, I made much against what has been written recently in the British Home and World by Mr. Higgins in the North East region. I mean, there was great changes made by the British Home and World when I arrived. I mean, the first thing I did was put the printing contract out for tender and save £40,000 overnight. Then we cut the overhead, the overtime bill, much to the opposition of much of the council, and saved something like £50,000-60,000 again overnight. Stupid amounts of money. There's still too much overheads, and if changing the processes and the way things done at the Home and World, we can cut the cost of wages there quite simply again, and bring it all under one roof.
So, Wayne Jones, on the region funds, if there is 500k out there and legally with advice, it is the RPRA's in the current situation. I'd hope the RPRA don't get these funds to waste. Yeah. Can't really say anything to that, can you? The structure needs changing, and there needs to be a plan and communicated with timescales. Yeah, no, agree. Couldn't agree more. Right, so we'll move on to some of these pre-posted questions, I guess. Where did we get to? Here we go. So this one is anonymous. Some people didn't want to be named. Where does he see the RPRA if this proposition fails to get through council? And let's be serious here. It's got through at region level, so now it's down to council. So we will see if they have the good of the RPRA at heart or they are in it for themselves. That's not actually anonymous. I copied it from Facebook comments. So that one's for you, Ian.
Well, it's not down to council is the first point to make, because if people, enough people engage who are like-minded and go along to their regions and vote this through, their councillor has to vote the way they mandated. Now, in the past, whether that's strictly happened, I don't know. Some people suggest it hasn't. But the good thing is now there's a rule that was brought in through the Welsh region, which was something I proposed through my club actually a couple of years back, that with the minutes as published, you have to publish how your councillors voted, so you can hold to account people. So if you go along to your region meeting and they vote in favour or against the proposal, and your councillor votes in a different way, then obviously you can see they've done that, and you can call that into question. But sorry, what was the rest of the question, Dan? It was
I've gone past it now, but I think it was basically, I think you pretty much answered it there. So we've got loads to go through.
And he said where would they think the RPRA will end up? Well, I think
Oh yeah, that was
unless you start rationalising costs, and this is just one element of rationalising the costs.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one thing that's going to go happen. It's going to get more. It's going to get dearer and dearer to run when you have less and less members, meaning we're all going to have to dig into our pocket further.
Yeah. And the quality of the sport will deteriorate. The fewer members that you've got, the fewer pigeons are going to be racing. It's just not as interesting as it. I'd much rather come 10th in 2,000-3,000 birds than winning it with a couple of hundred. Yeah. I say 10th, like that's achievable with that many birds. I've done it before, right? So,
yeah, well, here we are.
Right, so another one here. This is mine, and this is sounds like a bit of a dig, but it is, because I'm a bit cheesed that I've been blanked by the RPRA so much when I'm trying to do something positive here. So this is my concern, I would say. So prepare for it. So I reread Chris Sutton's report, and I find that they've all got a common theme. It's I will not interact with social media. It wants to be. It's a one-way valve, and so it's just this one comment towards the end about. Is obviously making a reference to the fact that this proposal is out there. I think it was referring to one of the videos that we did previously. I wonder how we would cope if these dedicated people, the region secretaries, I'm guessing, were not there. Imagine all of the work of just under 14,000 members coming to the head office, with most sending in their subs in just 2 months of the year. With all the movements between club membership to amend on the database, and more often than not, a follow-up phone call is required for clarification. We could not cope. So what that says to me is, if this proposition goes through, the current CEO is saying we won't be able to cope. So when he says we won't be able to cope, that's saying I won't be able to cope. Now, in my view, if this proposition is looking like it's going to get through, it's got it to the AGM, you need to start making plans now, because there's a chance that it does get through. And looking at the stuff there's more to that report, obviously, but it was all easy stuff to fix. All the subs coming through in 2 months, automate it. You can have 20,000 subs in an hour. Doesn't matter. You don't need a person doing everything. And I mean, maybe for new members, there's going to be a little bit more administration, but what is the new membership uptake of the sport at the moment? It's minuscule, and a lot of the stuff, like a phone call after everyone, not realistic. It's automation. It's all down to automation, and I think it's almost sort of burying the head in the sand or deflecting. Is it red herring? Something like that? I don't know. Just some sort of phrase for deflecting what's actually true, and that just annoyed me. That particular comment, because it was obviously directed at this proposition and us talking about it. And I think it's just wide of the mark. Most people, I think I've spoken to, say, we're not getting value for money. Something needs to change. Automate it. We've all got the right ideas. Everybody is saying the same thing. Probably a bit of an echo chamber, and I am aware of that. We have tried to get people on. I have asked for somebody to give us a reason why this proposition should not go through. And so far, the only argument I've got is, Ian's trying to, get his own back on somebody or whatever. That's the only thing I've heard, which is, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Even if it was true, it's irrelevant. It's you look at the merit.
Yeah, it is irrelevant, but let's address it. I mean, get back at who, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And secondly, when I took the job, because I haven't changed my tune around all this, mind. This is something I was trying to implement when I was in the job. Who was I trying to get at when I was in the job to do it then? So I really don't look. that kind of negativity is obviously, they haven't got a better argument, so they'll come up with something which is total rubbish, isn't it? I'm not motivated by that kind of thing. I like to think I got the sport at heart, but it's a way of them trying to defend what is, in my opinion, a position that's defenseless. You can't defend it, but people are entitled to their opinions. Chris has got his opinion. I've got my opinion. I like to think I can back up my opinion, and quite frankly, I've never ever criticised Chris Sutton publicly, but it's what he's saying is total nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I can do that, so that's fine.
Yeah, he's right about dedicated regional secretaries. I've been a regional secretary. I know who's involved. He's right about that, but that doesn't justify keeping it in place when there's far better, more efficient ways of doing things.
I think that's the ultimate thing here is not to take it personally. I don't think you should take it personally if it doesn't get through. I certainly won't.
No.
And I don't think they should take it personally if it does, because everybody understands that I don't think there's any winners in any of this really, in pigeon sport in particular, because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't please everybody. That's why nothing ever gets done. Not everybody will agree, so it is difficult, and it's always the people that put themselves forward for these positions that get it in the neck, and they very rarely get praise unless it's internally. So
but Dan, we should address this thing that it can't be done centrally. I mean, the system, as we alluded to earlier, already exists.
Well, I've got a question for that, Ian. So I'll try to cut you short because conscious of time. So we'll just blank through some of these and then we'll go into those. So Ray Knight, just say this proposition gets through. Will it be for 2026? Because if so, by the time 2026, the ante will only be working to change it for the next AGM.
So it'll come into force straight away. And the way the proposal was written was it acknowledged there's going to have to be a transition year where they'll have to elect the executive committee from the existing council, for example. Because they'll have to put in place all the processes that will then lead into the following AGM. But the rules around one member, one vote, and the regions going will be in place from that AGM.
Okay, so another one that relates slightly to that: how will the RPRA facilitate a one member, one vote?
Yeah, I mean, another question that's been laid on my feet. I mean, again, the technology already exists within the RPRA where people can log into their account and basically vote. So you could have an online vote. But again, for people who are perhaps not IT savvy or don't want to do it that way, I mean, there's simple ways around it. You publish, like they do now in the British Home and World, the proposals with a vote-in slip. Tick how you want, send it into HQ. And I think, Dan, we've had a conversation previously about it where, they could use AI to count those votes when it comes in rather than somebody being sat there saying they voted for, they voted against. It's the frustrating part is the technology has moved so much, over the last few years, and we are getting further and further behind with it, and we're not utilising it to make sure the RPRA is strong and moves forward in that kind of way. So,
George Slack, I can see a day, as Dan says, a simple process such as online subscriptions is a scary prospect to a CEO. Mind-blowing to me that. I can see another association picking up RPRA members. Yeah, I mean, it potentially in the future, I think that's what eventually it'll be a private. If the RPRA, ran out of funds, it'd be a private company that takes over. Maybe one or two, I think, but that's another topic for another discussion, I think.
Yeah, I just picking up on that point. And I know we've had this conversation with other people in the past. I'm still passionate about we need a strong functioning RPRA. This business about joining other unions, I'm not a fan of that approach. I just think that weakens the sport generally.
Yeah,
we really need one organisation in this country as a governing body, really, for the sport and really driving it forward.
If it's run effectively and the members actually get a vote, because I think the issue at the moment is if you don't like the way it's run, tough, you've got nowhere else to go, and I think that's where it's probably a bit Thatcherite to say that then right, well, bring private industry and have two, and if you don't like that one, go to the other one. But I don't think the sport's big enough potentially to sustain that. No. Although I think it probably would be if it was more automated. But anyway, Ray Knight, should this proposition come to fruition, the RPRA are not structured to handle the changes required. That would what would the cost be of such software, and how many staff would it require at HQ? I'd like to jump in there. Yes, they've got plenty of money to do it. have they got the skills? Judging from the feedback of the meeting, the minutes of the meeting that I listened to, probably not. I think it does require a certain skill set to implement things, but you can always subcontract that out if you give them a brief of what it is that you're aiming to do. So yes, they've got the money. The staff there probably aren't. That's why it's not being done at the moment, skilled in that area. But look, if it doesn't happen now, it's got to happen at some point, and it's better to happen while the money is there than taking out loans or just doing a shoddy job of it in the future. It's not a big job. It's not. It's so basic, really, as a lot of people will.
It exists. It's there. It'll cost a pittance to resurrect it. And I mean, even if the skills, I know I'm not going to comment on it really, but even if the skills are not there within the RPRA HQ in terms of staffing level there, which they may well be, there's people who are very close to the RPRA and have helped the RPRA in the past. One name springs to mind, Peter Humphreys, who is definitely capable.
Yeah. I won't go any further with that one. We'll go for another question. Right, so here we are. Let's go for this one. So here's two for you. I'm conscious we're at 55 minutes, so we'll try and be a bit more succinct going forward. We've managed to hold on to 81 viewers at the moment. I don't know if that's the same that started. But anybody else wants to comment, then chime in on here on this chat. We'll read through them. Question 1. At the time of the COVID, sorry, I need to enlarge the text. At the time of COVID, the RPRA decision making was delegated by council to an executive committee. This is a bit wordy, but listen. The executive committee dealt with all the governance issues aligned to a continuance of pigeon racing during COVID and the maintenance of channel racing following Brexit. This proved the viability of an executive committee's ability to make speedy decisions in the best interests of the RPRA and its members. That's key for me. The implementation of an executive committee was an integral part of the Hall report. It has been proven as a management process. Why does council continually oppose changes to the governance structure when such changes could move the RPRA into the modern business world? So succinctly, it's been done before during COVID, when arguably the pressures on the RPRA were at their greatest, and with Brexit at their maximum, the most difficult time to navigate, it was all navigated by an executive committee. Granted, I think you were on that. Were you?
I mean,
before me, I was racing.
That's one thing council did positively do. I mean, they recognised that they couldn't run the association, and we needed to be able to take decisions really quickly if we would look after the Association of British Home World financially, but also, more importantly, in my opinion, get pigeon racing up and running as soon as possible. So if we look at what was achieved, basically, power, in inverted commas, was put in the hands of myself, the president, and 3 vice presidents at the time, David Bridges, John Waters, Gary Cockshott, Paul Hammond. We were meeting every night on Zoom, using online services, talking about what needed to be done. We moved overnight to a home working situation because people couldn't go into the office, etc. I talked previously about what the changes we made at the British Home World. That still got out on time every week. Even though our printer went bust during the middle of it all, we still managed to get away around that. None of that would have happened if we'd had the council's regional structure where we had to go back to get decisions made. We were making decisions as and when they were needed to be done, reacting to the threats and reacting to the opportunities, which is what we put in the proposal. And I mean, I can't speak highly enough of those 4 guys. I mean, I was getting paid to do this job at the time. These guys were putting in hours and hours and hours and weren't getting paid for any of it. And what we achieved through COVID, I think, has been very, very underestimated in some quarters. And I mean, we managed to navigate the RPRA through all that and the British Home World, but also we managed to get pigeon racing up and running and was actually the first competitive sport to get underway. And I think that's a marvellous achievement. So it just goes to show the person who answered your question spot on what can be achieved through this kind of governance structure. Because you just imagine if we'd had to make decisions quickly and we'd have to go back to a council and the councils would have to go back to their region for that to be fed back up the line to authorize something. It's just crazy way of running a business.
Yeah, I agree. Right. So we're going to start losing people soon because it's been an hour. I'll jump on to question 2, can keep this one succinct. The current CEO has stated that he is not a supporter of the regional governance structure. The current CEO has stated that he is a supporter, let's clarify that, of the regional governance structure. Does he have evidence to back up his claim that the current structure truly represents the members? My own experience would indicate that this is not the case. Very few members of the eligible clubs in my region are represented at regional meetings. In effect, a small number of individuals influence the direction of the RPRA. Why does the CEO defend and promote a governance structure that costs a fortune to run and doesn't truly represent the membership? Surely the job of a CEO should be to produce a business plan that secures the most efficient organisation delivering cost-effective governance. Given the amount of time the current CEO has been in position, why hasn't such a plan been presented to the membership? Now, I will say I did invite Chris Sutton on and or anybody from there to answer these particular questions. So it might sound like, we're having a go, but this is somebody's question. He's not here to answer it. Ian, as a former CEO, can you answer that one pretty quickly?
Well, I can't. I don't know why you wouldn't be looking at that kind of thing. I mean, again, I don't want to keep harping on about it, but that executive committee approach is exactly what we did. We come up with a kind of business plan in terms of where we wanted to go, and ultimately, there was some tough decisions need to be made, but we rationalised costs at HQ. We made people redundant. We cut down and made processes efficient at British Home and World. We got Pigeon Racing running, and people have always said to me, well, the government decided when Pigeon Racing started. The government didn't decide anything. It was left to us to come up with a solution to make it fit their guidelines, and we had to come up with that. So I don't understand why he's got this kind of negative approach to try and moving it forward. I really don't understand it. It's like the question before has proven. The executive committee approach works, and that's exactly what should be being implemented. And we should be continually revisiting the costs and trying to drive those costs down, or at least maintain the cost. But I mean, just looking at the balance sheet and the income expenditure statement, the costs are going through the roof.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at. Did I mention earlier that that it costs 800 and something thousand pounds the RPRA and the British Home World together combined, but 643,000 of that goes to employment costs, whether that's wages or national insurance or pensions contributions. 643,000 pounds a year last year for 13,000 members and however many subscribers of British Home and World. It's just insane. It's insane. Yeah. But anyway,
Dan, can I just make a point about those executive committee members through the pandemic? I mean, again, we worked well together, and everybody was pulling together, which was a refreshing change from me having tended the council process all the years previously. It was, it really did enforce in me that this was the right way to go about it. But those people could see it as well, and we're adamant the change needed to happen, even if they weren't part of the change moving forward. They were right behind it all. But ultimately, just to kind of give you kind of all the politics involved in this, those regions, etc., could see them as a threat again, because they weren't perhaps representing what the regions wanted them to represent. They're gone. They're not on council now.
Yeah. So everybody that was there on that committee that achieved all of that, nobody's there. They've gone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that sort of explains some of these figures, I guess. So here's another one. We're almost finished now, so hang in, everybody. What are Ian Evans' thoughts on the accusation that he is bringing undue influence on the sport? I'm referring to the North East region notes by Mr. Higgins in the British Home and World, 17th of January, page 42. Mr. Higgins references a proposal put forward to the North East region that he claims are the thoughts of a member in another region. I can only assume he is referring to Ian.
Yeah, I did read that in the British Home and World. A little chuckle to myself, if I'm honest with you. Quite surprised at David, but perhaps I shouldn't be. Obviously an attack on me, but rather than taking it personally, the question I ask myself is, what exactly is he saying there? What does he mean by undue? What was the word, Dan? Undue
influence.
Undue influence. I mean, I'm an RPRA member. Am I allowed to have any influence?
Your Welsh accent there, isn't it? Sorry.
Yeah. Am I not allowed to have an influence like any other RPRA member, or is that left to the elite like Mr. Higgins to have a say? I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? I think the people who are entrenched in the regional structure and perhaps have got a lot to lose from getting rid of that regional structure are the ones who are attacking people on a personal level and are trying to protect it at all costs, really. And they don't want anybody else having a say. Is what only thing I can take from that, whether I'm right or wrong. What I've taken from that is not a dig at Ian Evans, but a dig at the membership in general. That nobody's allowed to have an influence other than this certain select clique. Yeah,
I think that's the beauty of YouTube, and you you can have a say. Even the little guys, the newbies, can have a say, I guess. Even though I tried to be as impartial as possible. Okay, right. So I think we're almost done. Here's one. This is one that's my own concern as well. In fact, somebody just referenced it in the chat. Let's have a look, see if I can find you. Where are we? Guys, Barry Nickel. Guys, you say this may not get through. This has to be a fair process. It seems there's a fear it may be sabotaged by design. I do hope that transparency would dictate that this won't happen again. I think a lot of people feel like that. And my question, which kind of relates to that, is people that are unhappy with how it's currently run. I'm one of them. I don't like those numbers, and I don't like the way it's going. They're unhappy with how it's currently run. They'll also be unhappy to hand over more power. So by bringing this proposal in, the executive committee is going to be made from the people that are there currently. Some, I'm assuming, are good guys that have got their best interest, and then some aren't, or just are not interested and happy to see this thing out. I guess there's no other way around that, is there? You've got to, and hope that they do the best for the.
Well, it's something I give a lot of thought when we put this proposal together. Really, is because you're moving from overnight. You'll be moving from one structure to another structure. So how can you implement that new structure? And the only solution I could come up with was that you have to elect on a 1-year basis only. Is an executive committee from the existing council who would be present there at the AGM, assuming it goes through. Now, I can understand the kind of thoughts around you giving them more power, but in actual fact, you're not, because the new governance structure will put more power, not all of the power, but more power in the hands of the individual, who will now have a 1 member, 1 vote option, rather than the few select people involved in the regions. So I can see those concerns, and I don't think it's the ideal way, but it's the only way I could see of getting this implemented over that period that's going to follow the AGM. Otherwise, it'd just be chaos, wouldn't it? And that's one thing we can't have with everything that's going on, not just with the RPRA, but the sport in general. I mean, the threat from bird flu and everything else that's happening. We can't have chaos happening when there's nobody there to represent us, really.
Yeah, I think it needs a captain to steady the ship, I guess, if this does go through. Right, so I think that's pretty much all of the submitted questions. And I don't know if I can get onto Facebook to see if there's any more, but I think we'll probably leave it there anyway, because we've had an hour and 7. So thanks, everybody, for commenting and for watching. Feel free to share this. This will be live or uploaded, should I say, on the channel, so you can watch it back and send it to other people to watch back. The most important thing, yes. So this is Ray Knight. So we did go over this, Ray. I think you were still driving home. It is, yeah. We need to get people voting. So get in touch with your club secretary tonight. Drop him a message and find out who the delegates are. Get your club voting. And if it doesn't go through, we've had a good crack at the whip. I think this is the best chance of it going through. If it doesn't go through, then so be it. You have to accept it. But if it does, then let's use the opportunity to make the most of it, I think. But yeah, you've got to get in touch with your secretaries. You've got to get and find out when your regional meetings are. I did it, and I've only been doing this for 3 years, so I'm sure everybody else can do it. Ian, you got any final thoughts before we?
No, just to reiterate what yourself and Ray have said, really, in terms of just trying to encourage as many people to go along, whether they're in favour or whether they're against it. Just get there and get your voice heard. And I feel, this is. I've mentioned it before, I'm not doing this for me per se, although I'm really passionate about it. I think if things don't change now, they're never going to change. So if it doesn't go through this time, we just have to accept it and get on and race out pigeons, which obviously we still do as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, well, thanks, Ian, for coming along. Just a quick one from me before I disappear. I think this worked quite well, so I'm hoping to do more of these, maybe on some more jovial topics. I'm looking maybe potentially next week, looking at a question that I get asked a lot, and I ask myself a lot, is when you're this time of year, we're choosing birds to pair up, and how you make that choice, which birds you're going to put in your loft, and how you're going to create your race team. So selecting birds for breeding, I guess. Have you paired up yet, Ian?
Don't get me on then, because it'll be very short. Open the parking door, let them get on with it.
Yeah, okay, that's one tactic, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and find some guests to get on. So I'll put something out a bit. I'll put something out on the YouTube channel and the Facebook page to get some more questions and see what people think. But if you liked it, then give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to both channels as well, please, guys. And we'll end it there. If I know I don't even know how to end this thing. There we go. End stream.
Anyway, thank you, Dan, and thanks for everybody who's taken the time to come along. Hopefully it's helped.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Cheers.
All the best.